There we go. Okay. All right. Miss Little, if you would, let's start out with your background. You as a candidate, what you do in your day job, how old are you, your family, do you have a significant other, do you have children? Just let's start out with you and who you are as a person and candidate.
Okay, I will state that I am an Army brat. All of my parents, I have a stepfather that I consider daddy, but all of my parents served in the U.S. Army. My mother got out as a captain in 1989, and we left Berlin, Germany when the wall came down. So I started grade school in Berlin, Germany, and had a bit of a hard landing when I returned to the States and realized there were a lot of differences. Those differences predominantly centered around racism. Definitely turned me into what I would consider an excellence junkie, kind of getting in that sense of always feeling the need to prove your self-worth and that you were equal to your peers. And so from that area of Highland Park, Illinois, we transitioned to the Fort Meade area, so to PG County, Maryland, where my mom then joined the FBI as a special agent, and I was identified as gifted. And 5 years later, when we moved to Woodbridge, Virginia in 1996, I applied to TJ and was accepted. So kind of did that dual county life where I lived in Prince William, commuted to Fairfax at the age of 14. And
You've been commuting a long time, haven't you?
Yes, I'm very intimately aware with traffic and transportation concerns and matters in the area because of that experience of, having a 2-hour commute as a 14-year-old. Because of that experience, I recognized the power of inclusion and decided to attend a historically Black college in Florida, Florida A&M University, and always had a heart for diversity, equity, and inclusion work because I recognize that the contributions of citizens can be maximized, if you will, when they're in inclusive environments. And with my mom being one of the very few Black female special agents in the FBI, kind of living vicariously through her experiences before I became an employee of the FBI myself, was kind of this 30 years of exposure to FBI culture, which is, obviously the premier law enforcement organization in the world. And just the intimacy of my awareness with law enforcement culture and the intersectionality of being Black, and understanding how there's a lack of accountability at every level of law enforcement, also created its own sense of concern about inclusion. So in 2019, when I was helping my third child, I have 3 children in Prince William County Public Schools.
And while we're on that, what are the age ranges of your children?
13, 14, and 15.
Okay. And were you born in Germany?
I was actually born in Arizona while my mom was in Army intelligence training.
Gotcha. And how old are you?
I am 41.
41. We're the same age. And do you have are you married? Do you have a significant other, or are you a single mom?
I'm a survivor of domestic violence. Okay. And I finalized my divorce with my second husband, who was not the father of my children, just earlier this year in January.
Gotcha.
630 days to get a divorce. And I'll circle back to that part.
Sure. Okay. So I just wanted to clear that up at the top, just to get that information out. Now, you were going
single right now.
Gotcha. So what is it now? Now you're in the 19th, obviously, and there's a few people who are running in this race. It's a very competitive race. It's a new district, so there's no incumbent. What made you want to jump in this race? And B, why do you think you're the candidate to win?
I actually, it was not my choice, if you will, to jump into the race. I was actually asked to run by members of the party because the open seat was created and because I had been doing the work. For instance, I wrote my first bill at the end of 2021 when I realized I could advocate for the laws to change faster than I could get a divorce. And that bill, HB 1351 from the 2022 session, called Makya's Law, would have removed the 1-year waiting period that survivors of domestic violence had to wait in order to get a divorce. I led the TJ Alumni Action Group and advocated for the reform of TJ's admissions process, which allowed more students from Prince William County and South County to be admitted to TJ. I served as the parent advocate on Governor Northam's African American History Education Commission and was appointed the parent advocate because of my advocacy for that committee's work in the first place. And so I had been doing the work to the person who was really trying to convince me to run. And what they said was they just needed me in a seat. And at first I didn't think that it was something I wanted to do because it would have required me to resign.
Resign from Northam's board?
No, resign from the FBI.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Because of the Hatch Act.
Yes.
And so running for office meant quitting my job for a $17,400 position.
Right.
And in the midst of dealing with, trying to get out of a marriage from an abusive husband, taking that kind of pay cut, if you will, was a significant decision to make. However, because I had, that near-death experience when I just realized and accepted how temporary this life is. And at the end of it, all you're left with is what changes you made to make life better for your children. Mm-hmm. It was worth the sacrifice to me.
Mm-hmm. Do me a favor. You worked at the FBI. What did you do, and for how long did you work at the FBI?
I worked at the FBI for 16 years. The first, I want to say 3.5, where as a contractor. I'm a graphic designer by trade, but after 2009, I converted to a full-time FBI employee and picked up more program analyst job duties and became a management program analyst. I did a 3-year joint duty assignment with CIA in their Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and I was over reasonable accommodations and accessibility, and then returned to the FBI, where I worked in the IT branch, basically focused on process optimization. Mm-hmm. And then I resigned in January of 2022.
To run for this office. Was that? Yeah. And looking at the numbers here, you have outraised the two primary opponents. You not only have one primary opponent, you have two, yes, which speaks to the competitiveness in this strongly Democratic district that has been created through redistricting. So I'll ask again, why do you think you're the candidate for this competitive seat?
Because I have a different level of motivation to fight for what's important to my district, to advocate for those who have been underrepresented for a significant amount of time and voiceless because of my lived experiences. And lived experiences drive effort, they drive energy. And as South County and Woodbridge are on the eastern sides of both counties, there's a lot of issues that have gone unaddressed for a long time. And there's a lot of empowerment that I feel this district needs in order to receive equitable resources to thrive.
We've talked a lot over the years since I've been doing this job for the past 13 years about transportation, especially in this district. Um, when you say there are unmet needs in this newly created 19th district, South County, Woodbridge, what are they? Name a few.
Definitely transportation and traffic is the number one issue concerning this district, between the auto train and what that does to the Route 1 corridor, between the lack of access to slug lots and the construction that is constantly ongoing but never coordinated across entities, across counties that back Route 1 beyond, and that Occoquan bottleneck on Route 1, I mean, on I-95. There's just so many, I mean, between utilities, between developers, between just so many projects and the two boards of county supervisors that don't really communicate. So you have bus rapid transit being discussed and planned on the Fairfax side. And then what happens when that gets to Prince William? No one is serving as a bridge.
Yeah.
No one is serving as a bridge for this district.
And it's fair to say that there is not one OmniRide local bus that crosses the Fairfax County or Stafford County lines, for that matter. The commuter buses obviously do, but you cannot pick up a bus at the Woodbridge VRE and take it up to the Lorton VRE, if you will. With that said, 120, the intersection of Route 123, Route 1, and nearby I-95 is one of the most connected transportation hubs in all of Prince William County, and it's a very desirable area for people to want to move. We're seeing that in terms of developers coming in and redeveloping that North Woodbridge area. And when you say there's a lack of access to, you said specifically slug lines, what more could be done in the area that already has bus service, nearby commuter lots, and a VRE station, and those 95 express lanes? What more could be done in that area to provide more options for people who need to get where they're going?
I believe that there can be infrastructure around the slugging process. Absolutely. I mean, I remember when Horner Road was just that one single front lot. And since then, I've seen infrastructure get added to the Pentagon where there's signage. I remember someone tried to just on their own time create sluglines.com. And I mean, they were, like I said, doing it as volunteers. But if we actually put state level funding around that and created an app where we allowed for communication between drivers and riders, I feel like there could be some optimization there.
So you'd like to see the state take over that, the I guess an app is what you called it. I'm familiar with sluglines.com as well. Just the state take over that role and provide an option for commuters to use a state produced app on their phone to better utilize the slug network.
Yes, especially when you consider, the tree lighting ceremony or an accident that shuts down 95 and riders are scrambling, trying to figure out, okay, well, if I take the metro to Springfield, then how will I get back to, whichever lot I commuted from? It's really just removing barriers from communication between riders, drivers, and other transportation entities to make sure that traffic and people are flowing seamlessly.
You brought up TJ, your alma mater, where you went to high school, and you talked about the admissions process, and you said that you were on the front lines of change on the admissions process, and that the change in admissions has been the topic of a lot of news coverage in our area over the past year or so. And there are those who say that the changes in the admissions process weakened the process and allowed students who may have not deserved a seat at that prestigious school to give them a seat based upon where they live in their neighborhood, and that just based upon where they live and what school they went to for middle school. What do you say to those people who say that the admission standards were weakened in that move?
It's flat out false. And the data are what the data are. If you really look at the data, you'll see that the demographic that was impacted the most was actually socioeconomic. prior to the changes, only 0.62% of students admitted to TJ were socioeconomically disadvantaged. That is extreme from the county average, wherever you go in Fairfax or Prince William or any of the feeder counties. It's about probably around 31% is the average of the student population. Once we removed a statistically significantly discriminatory exam, which didn't test for merit, it tested for access to resources. We already have a system that tests for merit called grades. And even at the collegiate level, colleges have recognized that grades are a better indicator of long-term success than standardized quote unquote tests that you essentially have to prepare for to even take.
When you say access to resources, that's interesting. What was it? What was the task asking for access to resources?
The test, you basically had to take a prep class to learn how to take the exam, same way you do with the LSAT or the SAT. And so if you don't have the resources to learn how to take that test, you're not going to do well on that test. But when we remove that exam and the $100 application fee for a public school, which tests for nothing, no merit, the number of socioeconomically disadvantaged students increased to 25.09%.
Gotcha. No, on the topic of
average GPA did not change of the incoming class.
On the topic of schools, since Glenn Youngkin took office in January 2022, he's talked a lot about lab schools, and there's been a lot of talk about charter schools and school choice, having the dollar follow the student versus the dollar follow the school building. Where do you stand on school choice? Is it the next logical step for education in Virginia, or would you fight school choice if it was presented in Richmond?
I don't think there's an all or none situation. I think there's a balance. There is a need for what I'll call specialty schools, such as TJ, where there are students who are extremely gifted in certain areas or extremely passionate about certain topics, and having the opportunity to kind of develop or accelerate the development of those skills is necessary. However, we can't go all completely to charter schools, and we can't go all completely to public schools, but you can't starve public schools of resources and expect public schools to live up to the expectation that they've had since their inception, which is to allow economic mobility of Americans. And again, these quote unquote standardized tests that are used to essentially weed out those without resources have a foundation of being rooted in school segregation. When massive resistance came into play after Brown v. Board of Education, gifted education was literally the response to trying to keep schools segregated. So there's just a constant attack on our public schools, on our educators, on the books that they can read. And it seems to be a system of trying to just make public schools intolerable. So would you
vote for or vote against a school choice bill? Or are you undecided at this point?
Again, I think there has to be a balance. Maybe it's an 80-20 where there are certain resources set aside for specialty programs, governor schools, things of that nature. But especially if you consider Prince William County, most of the specialty programs that are desirable, and when I say desirable, I'm talking about your STEM, your creative arts, are on the western side of the county. So if you give people school choice, everyone's going to flock to the western side of the county, which is going to starve resources from the eastern side of the county. So I think it's important that we create specialty programs that are accessible within our public schools that balance out attendance, so that there's no one school, one district that's getting starved for resources. My son went to Colgan last year. He went to Potomac High School this year, and there aren't even crosswalks and sidewalks at Potomac High School because it's being starved from resources, because Colgan is overpopulated and Potomac is underpopulated.
And to those who would say, well, if more parents want to put their kid in school A, that would then cause school B to want to become better, more competitive, and more attractive to, or I guess, earn the want from parents to put their kid in that school. What do you say to those people who say school choice would make schools more competitive and make it better that way?
Schools within the same district can't necessarily be competitive against one another. It requires a school board to, again, balance out the access to resources, because now, again, you're creating a bigger divide that is counter to the purpose of public education. Everyone's entitled to equal education. If you're imbalancing resources, whether that's programs, whether that's funding, or whether that's facilities. I mean, my son literally asked me to take him to Burger King so he could use the bathroom before school because the facilities at Potomac are undesirable. That should not be in the same county when you have a state-of-the-art school that he went to last year with pristine, green, well-lit, toilet paper is always there. You know what I mean? So to say this school needs to be more competitive, okay, with what resources?
I want to switch gears, and my last question, I want to ask you about law enforcement and public safety. And in Prince William County, we have seen the violent crime rate go up 70% since 2019. We're seeing the rate of violent crime, the worst, go up in the county. At the same time, we've seen a wave of retirements, just natural attrition happening in not only the Prince William County Department, but departments across the U.S. But they're not backfilling those positions. And in turn, we've seen localities such as Prince William, Stafford, they've increased their base pay for officers and deputies to come onto the force. We're hearing that has helped, but we're also hearing at the same time, since the death of George Floyd, it's never been a more challenging or difficult time for a police officer. So if you're elected, what will you do in the state legislature to help law enforcement protect the communities they serve?
I think there's two sides to that. One is definitely making the field more attractive through pay and access to resources. But another one is ensuring accountability. There's a culture within law enforcement that definitely deters some from applying. And there's relationships that I feel can and should be fostered at the school level, where, I mean, career days, we have SROs that are literally there, but how often do they share with students what their career options are in law enforcement? It's contentious because relationships aren't being built and fostered. But I feel like it's hard for any entity investigating itself to find against itself. And that's where it's a balance of law enforcement accountability with law enforcement resource increases.
Would you support legislation that would see more police review boards with members of the public serving on them to review the actions and cases of the police departments across Virginia and how they do their job?
I actually feel it should be a top-down approach instead of because it's important that you do understand law enforcement culture if you're going to quote unquote judge it, right? Like, as a former FBI employee, I understand the FBI's culture. If I'm not familiar with that culture, I can't ask certain questions. I don't know where the bodies are buried. I don't know what's the norm, right? And so what I genuinely feel has to happen is if there is an issue or a complaint at local law enforcement level, the state law enforcement entity should be the ones investigating that. Likewise, if there's an issue at state level, law enforcement, the FBI should be the ones investigating that. And above the FBI should be Congress.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, Congress is Congress. And they too are not subject matter experts. And so that's when I feel perhaps retired or sibling organizations such as DEA or Secret Service are in a better position to understand the culture, the barriers faced, and make a judgment call.
I think that's a great point that you bring up about understanding the culture. I was actually talking, just happened to meet a recruit he just out of the Navy, and now he joined the Newport News police department. And he just told me, I told him I was in the media, and he said, "Oh yeah, we have this public review board, but for a member of the public to serve on it, they have to have first completed the Citizens Police Academy and do the 12-week course or however long it is, so they understand the culture of the department." I thought that was very interesting. So, last question to you. Is there anything else that you want to add that our audience should know about you before they head out to the polls, if they haven't early voted already?
Yes, I feel that this is a very unique district. It's the second most diverse in the Commonwealth, and it is in need of someone who knows how to build bridges, someone who knows how to also ensure accountability and speak truth to power while making sure that they're connected to the community and being a voice for those priorities.
Ms. Little, thanks so much for your time today.
I appreciate yours as well.